Good morning and welcome to another session of Aston Data Academy. Um, Today we'll be working on a full SQL project. We're going to create a new schema, database schema, but we're not going to use the insert. We're going to use another approach because I want us to insert an Excel or spreadsheet based on the whole analysis or explanation I gave from the start. So to do that, when you hover over this bit, you get this create a new schema in the connected server. If you tap on it, you can then give the new schema a name. The data set I gave you are data showing number of people that were laid off by various organizations, I think from 2020 to 2023. And so they're mostly about data employees being laid off. So you can name it something around that. So you can call it employee layoffs, right? Now, once you name it, when you look at the right side, you have apply or revert. So you just select apply. It brings you here, and all you need to do is just tap on apply. It executes the script and you close. And when you look here, we then have this employee layoffs we've created, right? If you open it at the moment, we do not have any tables created. So what we need to do is we need to import that file I sent to you, right? So to do that, under tables here, you right click and you can see table data import wizard. So you click on that, it then brings you whatever system you're using, but it brings you to a place where you can select a file, right? So my own part is the users, my part is in my download folder, and this is the file. So you should see it in your case. Because I have worked on this, it's automatically filled it for me, but obviously you may not see this. So you probably tap on browse and then you can select, go to the particular folder it is, and then select it from there, right? So again, you right click tables and table data import wizard. When you've selected your file, it then shows the file path here, and then you can tap on next. When you tap on next, we're going to see use existing table. No, that's not what we're doing. We want to create a new table because it's a new table. You can then call it layoffs. Let's call it layoffs, right? Let's call it layoffs. Just hit on next. And now it brings you to this place where you can see the various data types for the various columns. That's from the sheet. So we are saying that we have a company column, we have a location, industry, total laid off. Let me expand this. Funds raised. From this, I could see that the dates format for date is wrong. There's supposed to be a date. We can change this here straight away, but I would leave it so that when we're doing data cleaning, we can then format this. The fund rate is already correct. Integer, total laid is correct. Every other thing is correct. There are two things not correct, are the percentage laid off and the date. This is supposed to be a date data type, and this is supposed to be decimal, but we'll leave that so we can use it as a data cleaning exercise. And then we tap on next, and then we tap on next. It shouldn't take long. And then you see this, that it's finished performing the task. You click on next, tells you 564 records has been imported, and then you tap on finish. You then have to refresh to see the new tables. And then I hope I did it under employee layoffs. Yeah, great. So now we have this layoffs table, which we've created. Now, if you remember from the beginning, I did explain that we'll do some bit of data cleaning before we go into data analytics. A standard, in a real world scenario, when the data engineer or the software engineers are creating these bits, most times, 90% of the time, you're always going to get clean data. I've always told you that most of the cleanings we do, for instance, that data type thingy, there's no software engineer or data engineer who would leave it as text. Do you get what I'm saying? They're always going to change it. So 90% of the time, the data comes in clean. If you're going to do any bit of data cleaning, it's just going to be changing the values of the various columns, like maybe doing up. If you've looked at the string functions or some of the previous videos, some of those things we did when we're doing data cleaning or whilst we're working on one part of the query where you could trim or you could use upper to make everything uppercase and stuff like that. Those are a bit of the data cleaning you would do because 90% of the time they'll select the right data type. So obviously they do not control the values. Sometimes depending on the kind of software or application, they do not control the values of what people type in. And so maybe that bit, like I said, you need to trim spaces, you need to make some upper. So those are the kind of data cleaning you would do. 90% of the time, from your database, your data would most likely be 80% cleaning, just a bit of cleaning. But if you pull from a spreadsheet where people are manually typing, then you would need to do a lot of data cleaning. Again, most of this would have already been done by the data engineering. But if you find yourself in such a position, because it can happen. But right now, organizations will say they are employing data analysts, but then they give you a task like this. So we just have this data. Is there a way to put it in the data warehouse so that it's part of our data and we can do a bit of analysis? You have an advantage, you understand, and you're able to do that. So if you are doing that, let's assume there's no data engineer in that team, you have to do this. When you've created this table, you need to create a helper table, another helper table where you do the cleaning. Because what you don't want to do is clean on this one, and maybe you make a mistake and there's no helper table, right? Does that make sense? Again, if you have any questions, just stop me. So we will create another table, but basically what we are doing is replicating this layoff table, right? Because that's where we'll do the cleaning. And we're leaving this like this just in case we make a mistake. So we can always come back to this and start the whole process again, right? So to create a new table, you do create table and whatever name you want to give it. So I would just say layoffs staging. This is staging environment, and let's just say raw, like raw file. But how do we want it to be like? We want it to be like the layoffs table. So like layoffs. So we want everything that this layoffs table has for it to have, right? So you right click, sorry, you highlight this and you run this. Done. What's this saying? As in Data Academy. Oh, I'm on the wrong distance. I need to select where you employee layoffs. Okay. So I got that error because the schema that was selected was Aston Data Academy, but that's not what we're working with. We're working with this employee layoffs. So we run this again. You get this create table. There's a success, 0 rows affected here because at the moment we've not added the information, right? So we just click refresh for now. And then we're able to see the new table we've created, which is layoff staging raw, right? But then there will not be, it will show you the columns, but it doesn't have any value. So if you do something like select all from this layoff staging row, let me make this bigger. Select all from this, and you run this, you'll see we'll get just the headers. So it's created it for us, but um we've not added the information into it, right? Saying now we have this select all from layoffs. It's created the headers for us, but we've not added the values. So to add the values, all we need to do is say insert. And what are we inserting? We're inserting into the layoff staging row. That's this table. What are we inserting? We are inserting everything from the layoffs table. Remember, we're just doing a duplicate of it. So what this basically means is insert into layoff staging row. That's these empty spaces. We want to fill them up, but pick the values for what we already have in the layoffs table and just use it to populate this. That's what this means basically. So once we run this, we get this success message that's 564 rows affected. Now, once we run this bit, we should be good to go with the information from the layoffs table. We don't have it here. So now at this point, we can start cleaning the data. Now, the first thing we want to do is we would have to check and remove duplicates, right? So sometimes your data may not have duplicates. It can happen based on how people are entering the information, and you could be lucky not to have duplicates. So you can't just start off by deleting. You have to first check that that duplicates exist and remove them from the data set, right? So to do that, what we'll do is to check for if there's this, we're going to check each column so we can see them here: company, location, industry, total laid off, percentage laid off, the date, stage, the country, and the funds raised, millions. So we do something like select company, location, industry, total. Let me do this so it can give us the total laid off, percentage laid off, date. Let me use the backstick so that it doesn't use the actual date. Then we have the stage, then we have country, then we have funds. Let's bring this down. We have funds raised, millions. Then what we want to do is we want to count everything to find those that have duplicates. So we are naming it the header of this, the count as duplicate rows or duplicate count. So we are doing this, obviously, we know it's from the layoff staging row. And then we'll group by those bits, right? So that we're able to see location, industry. Let me just copy this. So these are the things we'll group by. We're basically grouping by everything so that we can see the duplicates we have. And because of the aggregate, we're going to use the having clause. So if it has more than one count, that's after counting everything. If any one of them have more than one, those are the ones we want to see. Okay. I don't think we have any error in our code. Once we run this, we get this oyster. This company has oyster, Charlotte, HR. The total laid off and the percentage laid off is null, means this is useless. We'll look at that because whatever analysis we want to do, yes, we have a company name and location. Where the importance of the analysis comes, we are looking at the total number of people that were laid off and the percentage laid off. Now, if that result is not provided, it's basically useless. But let's just see the both of them. So we can do something like select all from the layoff staging row, where company is equals to the oyster. Okay. And let's see how many of that we get. So it gives us these two. And again, both of them don't have the total laid off, percentage laid off. What that means is they're completely useless. Mostly. So what I'm doing is that it's your thought as a data analyst, right? You're going to be looking at the data. You're going to be checking it like this. Right now we're looking for duplicates. We found that only this oyster has appeared once. If you remember, when we run this, that's the only one that returned, which means every one of the information or rows we have appeared only once, but this appeared twice. The dates are different, but everything else is the same. We can assume they're the same thing, and then we can see that it has the total laid off, percentage laid off, and both of them are null, which means we can't do any bit of analysis, which means we would delete this. We're going to delete null in our third step of data cleaning. So it means this will go, but at least we've identified that there's duplicate, but both of them will go because they're not giving us any importance. It's null, right? And so we need to delete them from the data set. But this is how you identify if you have duplicates in your result. Now, what we would do next is we can also, another way to do it is you can add a row to each one of them. like we did the last time I taught you on row and partition, so that you are able to um, see the actual duplicates. In this case, we've seen it like this, but there's another way to go about it. So you can just do something like select all from, and then we give it a row number so that those that have duplicate, the row number will take 2. Then we do our over partition. Last time, I think I didn't spell this partition well. Then company, location, industry, total laid off. And just copy it from here. Just come down here. Take out this from, then add comma. So we're saying select all. We're giving them row numbers, and then we're saying if one has a duplicate, give the first one 1, but then give it the second number of 2. If it doesn't have the duplicates, move to the next one. I explained this in the previous video, but if you have any questions, you can feel free to stop me. And what we will do is we will order by, we should order by company, so they appear top to bottom, and we call this row number. We're doing this from the layoff staging raw table. So this will be my thought process. If I probably want to look for duplicates, or I'm trying to identify duplicates, I've shown you this first step where you count each of the rows, just ensure the one that has more than one. But to be clearer, you can show everything and show their row numbers so that you can see the one that has 2 as well. And this is what helps you to achieve that. So these are different ways you can check for duplicates. So once you run that, you can see that almost all of them has 1. In fact, that oyster one is showing as 1, and the reason why it's showing as 1 and showing that none has duplicate is because when we run this select all from the layoffs raw, where the company name is oyster, you can see that the dates differ. And so SQL is not interpreting it as a duplicate. That's why sometimes you just try different things. You can try this to see when we tried this, we're able to, it brought it out because this showed us that, okay, oyster appeared twice, right? But when we run this, it gives all of them a row of 1 because what is showing is, although oyster and almost everything appeared the same, the date was different. Duplicate count of 2. But when you run select all from the layoff staging raw, where the company is like oyster, it gives us 2. Let me end this. So it does have a count of 2, but just that the dates are different. And that's why this one shows that there are 2, because it's making sure that everything has the same. But because this one is making sure that, this one is making sure everything is the same. But this one looks at most and feels that everything is the same. But this date value was what I was looking out for, is coming out as the dates instead of the actual dates. But identifies that the date is different, and then it's counting them as 2. But this identifies everything as it's the same. And so in giving it a row number, because everything, if we look for oyster, which should be at the bottom around O, which is here, it looks at everything. Okay, exactly. This is what I was looking for. So it gives it a row number of 2. So I was checking very fast. I missed it. This was what I was thinking because it's supposed to show. I was wondering why it made it appear once. So it's the same principle here. As you can see, it has appeared and there's a 2. So those are the two ways you can use in checking for duplicates. You just have to be very careful. As you can see, I had to keep running to make sure I find what the issue is. So what we're doing is practical ways of data cleaning. If you get such a work like this, you need to be careful, take your time, run it over and over again. Um, what this helps us identify was, you see, it gave it to us like this. We are able to see that this has 2 duplicate count. If you had gone with this approach and you're in a hurry, in your mind, you would have felt like, oh, everything is 1 and there are no duplicates. And oh, so you move on with your data. So sometimes it's just about doing another extra bit of checking. Okay, I've checked duplicate, but there's another way I can check it to make it easier, which is why I've shown you these 2 ways of doing that. But in this case, in our case, there are no duplicates. We know that those 2 have null, so we'll exempt them from the data when we are deleting nulls. Okay. I think the next step to do is then to standardize the data. But if you look at our data, let me bring this down and clear this. You observe it very well, right? I'm doing this on the fly as we are learning. I downloaded this data from a data source and then doing it on the fly so that you see the whole process of doing it yourself as you're working. There's no perfection, but it's only as you do it often and practice. So you observe the data. We have company, we have location, we have industry. These are text-based. And one thing about text is you don't want to be seeing spaces in front of them. With a layman's eyes, you're not going to be sure. So one way of standardizing your data to make sure there are no extra spacings and all that bit is we check each one of them individually because they are kind of the way they are being written. This page now may be exactly how the company's name is. So in this kind of instance, you probably not worry about removing the hash or any of those things. So to do that, you then run individual queries to see. That's what I would do anyways. To be able to standardize my data, I run individual queries for some of them that I know that will have issues, and I will pick maybe four of the columns that are text-based. So I will start probably with company. So I'll do something like select distinct company from layoff staging raw. That's this. And we just basically order by the industry, right? No, order by company. We are doing company, sorry. Select distinct company from layoff staging raw, so order by company. We're trying to standardize the data, and then you look through, try to see if anything is off. To be fair, nothing looks off. I think everything looks okay. You can then check for the other text-based. I think the next one would be location. We change this to location from layoff staging raw, and we make this location. And the same thing as well. And then you try for industry. One of the reasons why we're doing it one after the other is some appear. So for instance, if you look at when we run industry, for instance, when we run this, some companies can have the same industry, like finance or food or media. Now, if we've done distinct industry and we put, let's say, country here, and then we order by industry and country, and we run this. Look at this. This is shorter, right? But when we run this, you're going to see that some of them have the consumer type and the crypto. Some of them have the same kind of data set. If you even add one more, it's usually the same thing. So probably just want to run them one so you can look at them individually. That's for the text so that you're able to know that, okay, this is what we are looking out for in terms of if we need to um, do some form of cleaning or deleting. You can see United States has appeared 3 times, but it doesn't mean that United States is duplicate. Do you get what I'm saying? Or because fitness has appeared different times, that's why it has appeared so many times, and that's why we run them individually. I think if we go back to running order by country, when we do this, when you do select distinct country from layoff stage in row order by country, we look at it very well. None of them appear twice, but United States has appeared twice. Now it will look like they are the same, but they're not. When you're doing the visualization, this would have its own count and this will have its own count, but we can tell that we only have one United States as a country. The dot doesn't make this a different United States, so we will need to fix this. As you can see, this gives us them one after the other when you run it one, like you're running the column one. But if you then run it with something else, industry, they appear twice and three times, and now you don't know if it's because that they exist in the reason why they appear more than once is what we are doing is we are counting, we are showing industries as well. So if certain companies are in the US and the industry is the industries that are repeated, if we look at it again, like Brazil is repeated, right? So what it means is these industries, the companies, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 countries, 8 companies in Brazil, and these are their industry. But it doesn't mean there are 8 duplicate Brazil as a country. Because we've added this industry column to it, so it needs to also tie each of those industry to the country they belong in. And so you're not going to be able to determine duplicates doing it like this. That's why we do it individually. And now we've identified that country has one duplicate or issue we need to fix, which we'll fix on later on. I think another bit we need to check is stage. See if there's anything off about it. There is nothing off. We have acquired private equity seed. HIJ subsidiary unknown is fine. It means there's a company stroke country where their stage is unknown. They don't know about it. That's fine. I think at this point in time, we've checked all the texts based stage. Yeah, we've checked country, we've checked location. Let's check location, see if there are any off data in location. So we run this. It look the same to me, like all good. There's nothing, yeah, there's nothing wrong with location. So the thing we found from the text-based is the US appeared twice. That's from country. The other one is the same, and we know we need to make it the same because in the visualization, it will show 2 of them as separate United States, but we know they are the same thing. But the first thing is we just a standard procedure because sometimes you can be looking at the data and you look like, oh, there are no extra spacing, so no need to run the query to update and remove any spacing. But sometimes if there's a space after a while, if you're typing, obviously you're able to see, but if the value is already there, you can't tell. So on the safe side, I always just would advise, and personally, I always remove any trim. It changes nothing, even if there are no extra spaces, it doesn't spoil the data. So it costs nothing to change them. So to remove extra spacing, we use the trim, if you remember from our previous listing. So you do something like updates. Update is the keyword to use to make these changes. So you do update layoffs staging raw. That's this table. I don't want to be typing it out. We don't have time. And then what are we changing? I think we are setting the various test columns so that if they have any spacing, it can be fixed. So we say sets and we name each and every one of them. So we say set company and we say equals to then the trim keyword and the particular column name we want to trim. So it checks the company and all the values in company. If there are any ones that have spaces in front or behind, it takes them off so that they're standardized. So this one way of standardizing your data. Another text-based column is location. So you do location. Then you do trim, then location. So what I would do is I'll just copy this again and then change to the other columns. Let me quickly run this so that I can see our text-based columns. So down company location. Next bit we need to do is industry. The next bit is stage. That's a text-based column. And the last one would be country. All right. So now at this point in time, if any of them have, there are some data you work with where you see it clearly after checking on them individually that there are spaces. The Brazil now, this B, you can see that it's clear that there's a space in front of it, or this acquired, like it's in the middle and stuff like that. This stream would fix all that so that all of them just be at the left-hand side spacing from the front and the back is taken care of. And so once you run this, let's clear this so we see what it gives us. Probably will give us the same 5 rows affected, right? So you see from our own plain side, we could not see that there are 5 rows that are needed to be trimmed. You know, we have 564. So your response will tell you what rows were affected. So it's giving us 5 rows. It means from what we ran, what we're looking at with our bare eyes, that it looks like we don't think that there's any spacing. 5 rows had spacing. So that's why I always just say run it. It changes nothing, right? If they don't have anything, it will give you 0 rows. The data will not change, right? And it's good so that you just have a clean data and you have a standardized data. Now the next bit we will want to do is the United States we saw. We don't want it to appear twice. So what we will do is to make the other one that has a full stop become the same as the United States without a full stop. So they're all the same. So we would update the query. But what we are setting in this instance is country, right? We are setting the country equals to United States, where what are we changing? Is the other one that has the dot, where the country is this, that has this dot by the end. Let me check again, but let me just run a quick query to see it, where country like United States. So I'm saying check the layout staging raw table. Any country that has United States in it, just give it to me. Have I made a mistake? Selecting from layout staging raw, where country like United States. Let me just copy the error so that I know where mistake is coming from. Where's the error? Near United States. So select off from layout staging row, where country. Okay, I didn't close it here. So it gives us only those that has country. United States, but I do not want all of them. So let me just make this distinct country. So let's see. Yeah, so it gives me this two. Just want to see that I'm spelling it correctly. That's basically why I wanted to, yeah, so that we don't have a second duplicate. So basically what we're saying here is now update this second United States with a dot. No, let me add it. So with a dot. When you use equals to, it needs to be exactly how it is, how the value is. Like you can type it anyhow, it will still give you the result. So for instance, if I use where country equals to United States, this is just a teaching moment, right? And not using like, you will see what will happen. You see, it didn't give us a second one because I didn't put that dot. If I put this dot here, it's now exactly like that one, right? So if we run this, it then gives me that one. But because I want both of them and I don't mind how I would write it. You then use like. Like will give you anything that looks like it. But when we're using the equals to here in the update, it needs to be exactly as it is, right? So we're saying this United States, that's the second one, and then specify it clearly by putting the dot and writing it as it is. But then changing it, updating it to be this United States so that we have one value. Then you can run this query. So you can see it's affected 3 rows. And now once we run this, we should not have the one with the dot anymore. We now have only one because we've updated that one to this And this is, as explained, is good for visualization so that you're not having two United States in the end because they're all United States. Now, the next bit is to handle null and blank values. To do that, we will first check to try and identify the ones that have null values. So we do something like, remember when we're checking for that oyster, remember it's still there, I know that there are some null values. So we do something like select all from layoffs staging row. Then we say where, let's just check for a few ones because when I run this with my eye, when I was glancing, not this thing, so let's just select all from the staging row. When I ran this, I could tell where most of them had null. You see, company and location really didn't have null with our face value. You can see industry has, I can see it's mostly these numbers bits. Even the staging, most of them are filled. If they're not filled, the right or no, which is fine. I think country, most of them are also filled. So it's the value bits that are not filled. So I'll do something like select all from layoff staging row where total laid off is null. Or check for percentage laid off is null. And I saw that industry too had null or industry is null. Oh, was there any stage that was null? No. Then we say funds raised million stable is null. So just check. I want to see the null values. Right. When we run this, it gives us the ones that have null. Right. And you can clearly see the nulls. Now, it's very important to understand that for total laid off based on the data, these nulls are normal. They are not data error. It means, however, it was filled. The company in this accolade failed to record for this one accolade. I think it will go because the percentage laid off and total laid off is null. So we can't do any bit of analysis. This is an employee layoff data. In other words, companies are providing the location and industry just to know where they are from and what kind of industry they're from and the country and all that. But the key bits that we're looking at is for each company or the visualization we will do or the story we'll tell is for each company, how many people did they laid off? What is the percentage of the laid off? And then we are doing breakdown by the company and country. So the real data analysis is in the numbers, right? That's this bit. This company and location and industry are going to use them to group things. So you're going to say companies that laid off more than so and so people or percentage of this thing. That's where they come in. But if their total laid off is zero or no, they don't feel it. If they feel one is, we can still do something with it. We can say that one, this is a percentage column, right? One in this instance means 100%. So we can say it makes sense that everybody was laid off, which means maybe the company collapsed. And that comes into your bit of analysis on narrative, right? And you can also use the stage to determine why it was acquired. So because of it was acquired, that's why probably the company laid off everyone. Maybe the new owners laid off everyone. And so we don't know the total number of people that were laid off, but we know that one, which means 100%, means everybody was laid off. So you're able to tell and you know that these nulls are, it's not every null that you delete and say, oh, this bit doesn't make sense, or it's not. You keep them. But these ones will go because if both of them are null, then there's no bit. This one stays because the one helps us answer a question. This doesn't do anything. So that's what basically we're checking. All these ones will go. All these ones where both of them are null will go. And so to delete the ones that probably have these double ones, which is what we want to do, we're going to do this query. We're going to use the delete query. So we'll do something like delete from the layoff staging row. Okay. And say where those two columns are null. So that is where total laid of is null. Okay. And percentage. First, before we even delete them, right now they are mixed because we are seeing some that have. So let's look at only those that have. So we do is this same thing, but instead of the delete, we use select first, right? Just to bring them out. Select from the layers where total laid off is null and percentage laid off is null. Okay. Let's go end this. Go from right, and then we run this. Now it gives us only those that both of them are not. All these have to go. They're not going to help us in any bit of analysis. And then we're going to do delete from the layoff staging row where total laid off is null and percentage laid off is also null. Close this. All right, don't think there's any error with the code. Extra spacing. So we're afraid to delete this. It won't be an issue because we can't do any bit of analysis with it. Deleted 84 of those rows. Now, if we run the select statement again, we should get null. We should get an empty this thing because we've deleted all of them. So as you can see, all those ones we don't need them. So we've deleted them from the data set. If you remember, there's the industry part as well, where one was empty, if you remember. So if we do select industry from the layoff staging row, where the industry, it wasn't null. I think it was just completely empty. So where you can see where the industry is equals to this. So it was empty. So give me the one where the industry was empty. Then we run this. Let's make this select all from so we can see the other values and be sure. Right, good. So you can see that this industry here is empty. Now it's not a bad thing. The industry, whoever was filling this data filled everything. We still have the total laid off of people, and that's fine. I still feel like it's a good distance. The company's name is Airbnb, so we can assume that industry is Airbnb. But one thing about data is if you're not specifically told and the data comes like that, you do not assume, yes, it's clear that this is an Airbnb because it then affects the data. Then in whatever we're showing later on in Power BI, we will then say something like, oh, or whatever visualization tool you do, Airbnb numbers will add up to, this will add up to the Airbnb numbers. Probably not wrong, but the people have omitted it. And so it's not your place to fix, except you're then given a specific instruction that, oh yeah, depending on where you get the data from that, oh yeah, this particular one, that's the industry, please use it. In this case, we will assume we do not know. So in updating it, we would rather update it to unknown. Because if you remember, there are others where the industry is unknown. So the person might have left it blank because clearly maybe they don't know what industry they're in. And so you don't want to assume for them. And instead of writing unknown, they left it blank. Is it industry that was unknown? And I saw something where some people wrote unknown. So let's run everything. And check for those that have unknown. But yeah, so that's what you want to update it to so that you're not assuming for the person. So we do something like update layoff staging row. Right. And we're setting the industry that they didn't put anything. We're setting it to be unknown. And where industry is equals to empty. The person did not add anything. So once we run this, let me clear this so we can see our results. It says one row is affected. Now, I think when we run this for industry, that particular one shows up and now it's been, instead of blank, it's now updated to unknown. So this will fall under unknown in industry category, right? I think the next thing we would need to fix is the data type for the date. So date should be a proper date. If you remember, I left it in the state it was so that we can quickly do it on the call on this on this stuff. What we want to do first is to actually preview what it will look like before we convert and the format we want. So to do that, I think the first thing is to check what formats. To do that on MySQL Workbench, you use the keyword describe. You're telling MySQL to describe the data types for the various columns for you. So you say describe layoffs raw, and then it will give you all the columns and their various data types. We saw it when we were importing, but let's just assume you were not in the process and then you're doing a data cleaning, and that's why I left it so that you then come and check and you're like, okay, no, date is showing text, no, date is supposed to be a date format, or company is text, that's fine, location is text, that's fine, industry is text, total laid off is an integer, that's fine, percentage laid off is a text, not supposed to be a text, it's supposed to be a decimal, then you change that. Date is a text, it's not supposed to be a text, it's supposed to be a date type. Stage is a text, that's fine, country is a text, that's fine, the font rate million is an integer numbers, so that's fine. So now we know we're only focusing on date and stage, no, sorry, dates and percentage laid off. So you then preview how you want it to look like. So you do something like select, and then we say date. And then we use the string to date function. Basically, you're saying this is a text, convert it to a date for me. But in the string to date function, you then have to give it the column, which is the date column, and then the format in which you want it. You do that by putting this ampersand, and you do something like for month, and how you want it, probably with this slash, and then another ampersand for day, and this slash, and then ampersand for y. From this, you always have to use lowercase, but I think uppercase means something else. And then we can give it an alias of cleaned dates, like the date we've cleaned, because the original date in itself is text, right? And then we're doing this from the layoffs. I keep typing, hoping MySQL will give me, yeah. Right, just to see how it will look like. Let's run this and see. So yes, I think this one won't work. So you can see it as a backstick. And this is giving me an error. Okay, now I need to put a comma here. All right, we should be fine. So yeah, backstreet to identify. The reason why I'm using a backstreet is our column name is date, right? But there's a function known as date in my SQL, right? So I'm worried if I use, which is what I've been trying to do, and you see it's returning date instead of the actual value. Even if you do it like this, let me see if it works. So that's why I was trying to prevent. Okay, it did work because this is the column name. So we can make this date because we have a date function. And then I'm just worried it will probably be thinking that's the date function. But then I think we can use it like that. So we are saying select date, which is the date column. We are converting the date. This is showing as text, although it looks like a date. If you're now doing your visualization and you're trying to do things date-wise, it'll give you an error. Probably we are going to do something date-wise based on maybe breakdown by the year or by the month, to show that kind of analysis. But when you do it, you won't get anything because it needs to work with the date type kind of value. But right now, the data type for this is showing text, so it won't work. That's why we need to clean it and change it from string to date. So I think when we run this now, we should be good to go. Right, so this is the actual date. Now we've cleaned it. So we know that this is what it will look like. Right. We now know that this is what it will look like. That's the date. Okay. Now at this point in time, we can then update. So we can do something like update the layoffs. Show it to me, show it to me. Just copy this. And do something like update layoff staging raw. What are we updating it? Like what are we setting? And we are setting the date into a string to test. So string to date, sorry. Right. And then what we are doing is we're saying it's the date column we're changing. We put a comma and we're going with the format as seen here, the one we previewed. Close this bracket. And then we're good to go. Is there an extra space here? All right, so we're updating this, the date, and we're saying change the string to date of the date column to now become an actual date. That's this date here, the values here is what we're changing first, right? So once we run this, let me clear this. Once we run this, am I missing something? Copy the response. 6, 2023. Update layoff stage general. Yeah, that's correct. We're doing the set dates and we want it to do this. Just like we previewed the month, the date, the day, and the year. Let me put the asterisk. Let's see how that works. Okay, it's still the same. Because the update keyword we need to use where the layoff stage general. And we're setting the dates and we're saying do a string to date. And then we close this and then we're having this date to say the date column, there's a comma, which is correct. And there's an amber sign before the M. We're using this just like we previewed in the D and the Y. If we run this, it's running successfully. SQL is not telling us there's an error here. Date value. This error message. So when you're dealing with SQL, no, this error message. They're going to hit some snag. So you just need to figure out incorrect date value 3/6/2023. But basically, we're trying to update the layoff stage in raw data, right? And want to convert it from text to date. And then we've done everything right, writing how we want it to be done, and then string to date. But the format we're using here, as I was explaining, MND means we're looking at the month and the day from a date format perspective. But lowercase y means it's expecting a 2 digits. And then it's in full by 2023. And I think our text input, it's a 4 digit. So we needed to change the lowercase y to the uppercase y. And so if we run just select date from after this update has been run, we run select date from layoff staging raw now. But let me see what we get. I still think we need to do one more thing. What we've done is we've changed the value here. The last time we ran the update statement, we've changed the value from text to date, which is great, but we still need to change the SQL. What's the keyword? We need to change the SQL data type. I think if you run this, I think we'll still be seeing data as text. So behind the scene as well, we need to change that. We need to change this date in the column behind the SQL to also a data type. So I think to do that, you use the alter keyword, and then you're saying there's a table we want to change. and we say layoffs staging raw. And then what we want to do is we want to modify the column in itself. That's from the SQL behind the hood from dates. We want to, it's a date, but currently it's a text format. So we want to modify it from date to date. If you remember, I told you there's an actual function called date where SQL understands it as date. So that's what we are using here. But this one is for the column name itself to identify it. So we are using to do that when you want to change the data type behind the scene. If it's not already done, use the alter, and then you use the table as a keyword. And then you mention the table, the database, the table under the database that you want to change, and then use the modify keyword. You're saying, okay, under that table is the column date. I want to change it from a text type to a date type. That's what this does. And then we run this, right? And it gives us that it's done that. Now, at this point in time, when we run this describe, we now see that date now becomes a date type. So that's been fixed. I think the next bit is we're almost done, but the next bit, I think we need to fix the percentage laid off. So we've seen it, but let's look at it again. So we do something like select distinct percentage laid off. I don't know. Percentage laid off. We're doing it from the layoffs staging raw. So let's quickly run this. And we can select it. Okay, percentage laid off. Right, and then let's look at the result. Let me clear this. Right, so they are showing in decimals, which is good. So this we know is for a percentage, right? They're showing in decimals, which is good. And we know 1 means 100%. This is 50%, or no, this is 20%. This is around 5% and stuff like that. So one of the reasons why we would leave them like this is you can't convert them to percentages here. What happens is this is showing as percentage, we know. When you move this to Excel and you move this to Power BI, and then you format the cell or you format in Power BI, what will happen is if you've already changed these bits now and the value is showing the actual whatever 20%, 50%, you have 50. If we do the conversion here, we would have 50 here. But what will happen is when you now click on select format cells and you select percentages, because maybe you want percentage sign to show, so it gives you the reader or the stakeholder more visibility to know that it's a percentage thingy. It will then do the percentage again, which will then do the 50 in the percentage form again. So you don't be having something like 5,000%, right? But if you leave it like this and you convert it, it will then give you the actual 50% in Excel or Power BI. So we would leave it like this. We need it to be like this from the data set, which is in percentage. But we know that the data type it's text, so we need to change that. Again, we use the same process as we did, which is the alter, and tell it what we want to change. We know that is the layoff staging. Let me see if it gives me a table we want to change. What column do we want to change? We want to modify the percentage laid off column. But because it's decimal, we'll do something like, no, we'll do something like we want it to be a decimal. And then we're saying the maximum before the dot for every no decimals at 0 point or whatever, before the dot should be at least 5. I think that's a good number. And then after the dot, we want to leave it at 2 decimal places. That's what this whole 5-2 means. But we're altering the layoff staging raw mod table. What we're modifying is the percentage laid off column, and then we're changing it to decimals. That's behind the hood, right? Because right now we're showing as a text, but we need it to show at least at most 5 before the decimal point, and after the decimal point, we want it to be 2. So we run this. So it's run, but it's giving us some this thing. And I think it's because of some of the value that are showing one, but we've been able to convert it from a text to a decimal. So at this point in time, we've completed the whole fixing of the data sets. So if we run this again, we've gotten rid of all the nulls, and then we've changed United States to United States. We don't have anyone that has two nulls. And then, so at this point in time, the data looks a bit cleaner or better. What you can do is now change some of these aliases, because what you would do before you then move to Power BI is, I've told you, based on the kind of application or system you work with, right from Redash, once you have your result like this, you can immediately right click. There's a button that right clicks, and then you can start your visualization. So right from here, you can give aliases for this, like total laid off. And I know you remember how to do that. So we change all this total laid off with underscore laid off, percentage laid off to actual, to look like something like, so something like total laid off as total laid off, or whatever name you want to give it. So this is what I mean by the aliasing. But if you watch the previous videos, you'll see how we did it so that when you're looking at your various results, they look like this, look clean. And whatever you start with a visualization is how they will appear in the whatever bar or bar chart or whatever you create. Although in some of the visualization tools, you can rename them, but there's no harm in already renaming them from here. But basically, that's all. So what we will do is this result is what we will then visualize on Power BI. We'll visualize on Power BI to create a good, analysis of layoffs that happen around this period using the date. So you can see everything's good. We only have one United States. We have the funds raised. We know that it's 1 million, so this one 210 million. And you can do some of these bits in Power BI through the transform query. So we'd leave it at that. But these are some of the whole process in, like, when you're starting a full SQL project from start to finish, to have something like this before you then visualize. Okay. So if you do it on your own, I want you to export this data so that you have it saved somewhere. And then we then use it for a Power BI visualization. The first bit of Power BI will not use the actual data. We'll use this for the full project. But I think maybe from understanding all the features of Power BI, we'll use a very small data set. And then when we want to work on a full project, we'll then use this, our clean data, right, which is in our layoff staging. What's this? Layoff staging raw table.